Los Angeles, I'm in most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, April 8th. The LA Galaxy 2-1 losers in El Trafico at BMO over the weekend. I was at Galaxy Park for the watch party. We're going to talk about all those things coming up. Maybe it's good for the Galaxy, maybe it's bad for the Galaxy. We're going to talk about the controversy and the penalty kick as well, and everything else that game had to offer, including an aftermath that is neither fun nor right. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things as we get you ready for the Galaxy getting ready to play Vancouver on the weekend. Even a harder test, Vancouver on the road. We're going to get you all that ready to go, and in order to help me do all that, we're glad to have him back. It's Kevin, the Panda Baxter. Kev, the cruise man. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, the other Kevin.
Yeah, that's so many Kevins. So many. I feel like Alex's name is Eric sometimes too. So then I think I have two Erics, but I have an Alex and an Eric. I'm just not smart anymore, I think, really is the problem.
Seth, why am I on this podcast? I'm a border reporter now. I report on immigration and the border.
I know. I saw that was actually something that you had been working on for a while. I know that you went down during Coachella, right? Right before Coachella, you were down at the border doing that story. Just give us a brief overview of that story, because I think that's a really cool story.
Yeah, I went down in early February. This is a program from a group called IAC, which is a group based in Los Angeles, humanitarian group. They've taken soccer for 15 years now. They've been taking coaches and things to Africa, to Darfur primarily, but to other places. They've branched out to Armenia, and so where they go to refugee camps and they work with the kids. And the idea is the kids are always the forgotten people. The kids have nothing to do in these refugee camps. They're there for indefinite periods. And, for a kid, a day seems like a year anyway. So they go there and they bring soccer to them. And it teaches a lot of different values: teamwork, respect. In some of these places where women are very much second-rate citizens, they make the women be the coaches, so the men learn to respect the women from a young age, and they just use soccer in a way to teach a lot of life values. And with funding from Angel City, the NWSL club now in LA, they have branched out to Mexico, and they're working at migrant camps along the border, where families come and they bring their children and they wait at the border legally. It's not that we're not talking about illegal immigration. These people are waiting at the border for their legal asylum claims to be heard, and sometimes that takes months. Often it takes months. The kids are not in school; they have nothing to do. They're not protagonists in this way, in this event in any way. They can't, change their parents' decision. They can't change the asylum claim. So anyway, they go down there and they teach these kids to play soccer, sort of as a way to distract them and again teach these life values. And it's actually a pretty cool program. And man, some of these kids. We're talking about, kids between 6 and 7 up to 13. Some of these kids are really good.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, just they're put in a bad situation and they get to play some soccer. I loved it. Sort of like, hey, it's a distraction from everything. We're trying to distract it. You saying, by the way, nothing hits harder than home than you saying for a kid a day feels like a year. Because as you get older, the opposite. Now I have quick months. I go, quick months. Where'd that month go? My dad, who is obviously older, is in his 70s, goes, I have quick years now. He goes, it's like, wow, that year was fast. And I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign. But for my little one, my 4-year-old, I can tell you that every day seems like it lasts a year. So, and he's in the best of situations as far as that's concerned. So, always great. Good to read. LAtimes.com, where you can find it. And you're back from your cruise. You're all rested, relaxed. You got tanned. Where'd you go? Where did the cruise go?
Well, yeah, you mentioned that Vancouver. That's where the cruise ended. Started in LA, went to San Francisco, Victoria, Vancouver. Ended in Vancouver on Friday, and so kind of scouting the Vancouver situation up there, finding out how excited everybody is about the Galaxy coming up to play. Actually, no, they were talking about the NHL playoffs coming, and they're very worried about their Canucks, who are in first place right now, but really looked like they're about to be knocked off their pedestal. Beautiful city. I don't know if you've ever been to Vancouver.
I have. It was a long time ago, but a gorgeous city from what I remember. I was also like 12, 13 years old, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm back from vacation, and I'm way more exhausted than before I left, because one of those things where you're only going to have 4 or 5 days on the cruise ship, so you try to pack everything in, and you'll say, I'll sleep tomorrow, and then after 5 days of waiting till tomorrow never came, so I never did catch up on that sleep.
That's your fault. If you're on vacation and you don't have one day where you just basically don't get out of bed, then I can't help you. That's what it is.
It's bad.
Lasso's $10 super chat. Evening, gents. Exciting match, no doubt, but Cerrillo at center back, passable, a bogus penalty, a subpar Ricky Knight, and an amped up hostile BMO. That's El Trafico. Next streak starts Saturday, so $10 super chat. I appreciate that, Lasso. Let's talk about it, Kevin. LA Galaxy 2-1 losers. Yes.
I want to jump in on the Cerrillo thing before I forget, because I meant to tell you this before we got on the show. When I saw that lineup, the first thing I thought of is if you remember the game before, when was it the Seattle game when Zavaleta started? There was some concern about if Zavaleta had gone to play for El Salvador, which he didn't do, they would be very thin at center back, and if they needed him, what would they do? And so the Galaxy had actually talked about some fallback plans, and that was the fallback plan they had, using Cerrillo at center back. They said he played there a little bit before. Another thing they thought about is Yamani maybe playing at center back. He had apparently done that before. So when I saw that lineup, I thought, well, I'm sure to a lot of fans and others, it looked like, wow, this is just something they just pulled out of their hat. But no, I don't know if they actually trained with that, but that was their fallback plan all along. That wasn't as makeshift the lineup as maybe it might have appeared to some people. They've actually thought about that quite a lot.
I mean, it's still makeshift. Let's be honest. You have the little dude Cerrillo playing center back. It's not exactly, the best answer for all that. And obviously all of this precipitated by the fact that you had somebody like Eric Zavaleta who picked up a concussion. We know now it was a concussion. We had assumed it was. We just didn't want to say that because it was listed as a head injury until we could talk to Greg Vanney. Apparently he got hit in the nose with, I think, a ball. And that there was some blood and stuff like that. And then that eventually led to him possibly being put in concussion protocol and then put in concussion protocol. That's how that all played. Edwin Cerrillo slotted into that spot. And whenever I saw the lineups, looking at it, I didn't think Cerrillo would be back there at center back. I almost thought they were playing three in the back with possibly somebody dropping back in to play. In a lot of ways, they did, with Cerrillo sort of moving up and back. But just to remind everybody, your starting lineup on Saturday was McCarthy in goal, Yamana, Yoshida, Cerrillo, and Aude. That's your back line. Delgado, Brugman, Puig, Peck, Joveljic, and Paintsil. So that is your starting lineup for the LA Galaxy. That is how it went down. The bench, though, is also something I want to talk about, because I think that when you want to talk about where that lineup was and who was available as well, there wasn't as much there as I think people thought there was. Diego Fagundes, Miguel Berry, John Nelson, Martin Cáceres, Daniel Aguirre, Jonathan Perez, Gino Vivi. By the way, Vivi's sort of last hurrah as far as that's concerned. Whenever they get Garces in, Vivi's going to go down, and actually Vivi scored a great goal for Ventura County. If you saw it, beautiful goal. You should go watch it. I think the LA Galaxy either posted about it, or LA Galaxy Academy or Ventura County posted it. Go find it. Beautiful goal by Gino Vivi in that game. He didn't get it. He didn't get to play in this game. Mitrovic is in there, and then Cuevas. Just looking at that bench, for me, the guys who are going to be your game changer, there's really only one for me, and that's Diego Fagundes. You might argue that Jonathan Perez could give you something, but that's more of a guess. You might argue that Gino Vivi could give you something. I think we saw him preseason. That's probably not the case. Aguirre is more of a defensive sub. Cáceres, Greg Vanney said after the game, was really close to playing, but they didn't want to risk it. This is, and I want everybody to sort of understand this, and the idea of what this game, I think, meant, Kevin, to the LA Galaxy was an important game. You want to win it if you can. It's not the end of this season. It's not the thing that they're currently focused on. It's not the biggest thing in the world where you would risk somebody like Martin Cáceres, who's really close to coming back, and we thought maybe they would push him up just because they don't have anybody. And we're still sort of waiting to find out when Garces is going to come in as the next center back and when he'll be available, and so those types of things. So there was still enough of a doubt in there of all of those things that Greg Vanney says not important enough to risk somebody like Martin Cáceres. And I will say, for my money, Cerrillo played, I thought, just fine. The LA Galaxy were chasing this game for a lot of this, a lot of the game, especially whenever you give up a fourth-minute goal, right? So you're chasing the game. When you're chasing the game, you're going to leave spots in back behind. So there's going to be odd man breaks. There's going to be counters. I thought, for the most part, LAFC was extremely toothless. Again, the Galaxy didn't give up a goal from the run of play. That's nice to say, but they did still give up 2 goals. And one of those is the very first one, that back pass. Is there something special about set piece defending, Kevin, that the LA Galaxy don't understand? Is there some giant kryptonite? How does this keep happening now? Because I believe that's 6 goals given up from set pieces now.
No, well, it's 5 from corner kicks.
Yes.
And maybe, and they've only given up 11 goals, I think, on the season, right? So almost half just from corner kicks. And you know, that goal, that player was wide open on the far post. I know that ball kind of bounced around a little bit, but John McCarthy talked about it afterwards. You just can't leave a guy wide open. I mean, if a guy sort of gets up higher than you or kind of powers past you and gets to the ball, okay, that's something you got to work on. You got to be aware of that. But to leave a guy wide open, that just seems to me to be a mistake.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. But it's also, I mean, you're looking at playing zone defense, right? And we don't talk about zone very much in soccer. More or less, it's on set pieces that teams might play a hybrid man zone. The Galaxy very much playing zone. And then sometimes I wonder if it's because of their height that they don't want to chase guys around. I think there's a myth about zone defense that, you know, it creates too many gaps. And you're going to hear a lot of professionals say that, right? And I think that the big thing for me is that man defense also creates gaps. It's just about movement. Well, in this particular case, you're trying to counter the movement with the fact that you can cover zone. The goal in this particular case by Tillman, by the way, Tillman was, I thought, the best player in the game, and I thought that coming into this game. I think he's the best player for LAFC right now, and so you better have had your spidey senses about him in that particular setup. And I should preface this by saying that I was at Galaxy Park putting my stuff away when this goal was scored. I went back and watched everything, but I could only hear what was going on while I was putting away the podcast and doing all that stuff. But it didn't surprise me. If you go and watch it, if this was man defense, then Brugman should have followed Tillman around the corner and into the back. The fact is, Greg Vanney, I think, got it right, that if you are going to play zone, you can't leave that front post. You can't lose the front post. That means you can't let somebody win a ball on the front post, because when you do, it makes everybody else freeze, right? And so it was a really nice play by LAFC to be able to get that ball. And was it Ilie who headed it on? I think it was, right? Yeah. So Ilie gets there, and he just barely taps it. But on a zone defense, that's going to freeze everybody. You can't go to the ball. You don't know where it's going. You don't know. You have to react. The attackers don't have to react. They can anticipate. And that's what zone does. It gives you a little bit of lag in terms of the reaction. Now, by the way, I don't know if you're playing man on that, if that works or not. They actually set a pick for Tillman at the top. Brugman could have chosen to go with him, and it was sort of Brugman's guy at the beginning. But being you're not playing man, it's not Brugman's guy. It's who got sucked in. And when that ball gets played to the front post, the guy who's on the back post is going to want to step forward because the ball's in front of him, right? You're not going to step backwards whenever the ball's in front of you. You're going to want to step forward. And so when you step forward, you create the space back in behind. I don't think that you're like an ASO team here, Kevin. I don't think the Galaxy need to put people on 2 posts. But if you're playing zone, again, you have more freedom to sort of play a man on a post to allow that to happen. But the bottom line is, don't allow the initial ball to be won there. That's the biggest problem, is the initial ball and it coming in.
Well, and that was clearly a drawn-up play. I mean, that was a play that LAFC went in there with. It didn't happen by happenstance. And so, as you're saying, if you take away the first ball, then the whole play falls apart. But once you're allowed that first ball to be played, then LAFC has a pretty good chance of making that play work.
Yeah, it was fun. Alex gives us a $5 super chat, says, "Hey fellas, is this a game Kuntz and Vanney reassess the team and change their potential targets this summer? Deep enough in the season for that? No. I think they pretty much know. They're going to bring in a center back, which was really probably the biggest issue in this game. Now, that being said, defense didn't play bad. This was not a poor defensive effort. This was, I would say, a poor offensive effort. You want to look now, 3 games in a row that Ricky Puig has not really shown up, who has been a detractor from the LA Galaxy's style of trying to play quickly. And even when they got a chance to play quickly, Greg Vanney talked about this after the game, even when they got a chance to play, they didn't execute on that. I think I count at least 2 or 3 passes that Puig put behind people on breaks. One of them was late in the game that probably should have been the tying goal for the Galaxy, which if they would have found Paintsel early in that, instead Ricky waited too long and then hit the ball behind him. It slowed everything down. Paintsel had to peel back off. It allowed LAFC to get back. You're trying to play a team in transition who really hadn't gone forward too much, but in this case, you caught them going forward, you picked the ball off in the center of the field, and you were able to create a counterattack. This is what the Galaxy speed is made for, and they did not execute on it. The game plan from LAFC, Kevin, was to get ahead, which is what they did, score early, right? And then sit back, deny the space for the LA Galaxy to run into you. And the other thing mentioned by Greg Vanney, but evident in all of the stats as well, is LAFC decided they would foul everybody, and they would see whether or not the referee decided to do anything about it. In general, the answer was no. LAFC was called for 20 fouls. I think to 7 fouls for the LA Galaxy. There were 3 or 4 yellow cards for LAFC. 1, 2, 3, 4.
5.
Yeah, I only see 4. Yeah, there's only 4. 4 yellow cards, but Cherundolo got a yellow card. I think, didn't Vanney get a yellow card too? I think they both got yellow cards. From what I remember in my head somewhere, that happened. That could have been me in the crowd of supporters trying to pay attention to the game and not seeing it, but the yellow card's there in this particular case on the field.
Their strategy has always been, I think, since Ricky came, the strategy has always been that sort of hack-a-shack, just go after Ricky. Remember, it was really obvious in that playoff game that they played at BMO a couple years ago, where they just kind of beat Ricky up. And the idea was he's a small guy, he's the key to the team, and you take him out of the game and you'll take the Galaxy offense out of the game. They wanted to play that low block. They wanted to deny the Galaxy any space behind.
Right.
Cherundolo said afterwards he felt like the Galaxy weren't going to be able to, LAFC could attack them with a counterattack, and LAFC had to really make, in Cherundolo's words, they really had to make use of their opportunities. Whenever they went forward, they had to get something out of it. And even though the Galaxy had the ball over 60% of the game, I think almost 65, 66% of the time, so over an hour of the 90 minutes, they were outshot 20-18, and LAFC put 7 shots on goal, which is pretty good for a team that only had a ball a third of the time.
Yeah, I will say, though, of those, and by the way, that's a big shout out there to John McCarthy, who came in and made every save he was supposed to, played an exceptional game. I thought he was on par. You were wondering how it would be for him coming back into the stadium. You were wondering how it would feel to sort of be back there. You'd wondered what reception he had and how he would play in that stadium and do things. I think he answered all the questions on that. I had 0 issues with anything that he did. He was not the issue on the night. 7 saves for McCarthy, a couple really good ones. But for the most part, I thought LAFC was rather toothless going forward. The most dangerous play happened very late in the game when Boanga misses a wide open net. At that point, The Galaxy didn't even have a left back anymore. At one point, the Galaxy only had 2 defenders playing back there. It was Yamane and Yoshida, and that was it. There was nothing else, right?
You know what the most interesting play of the game was for me, and I know we'll talk about this because the foul was really soft and very controversial, the one that led to the penalty kick. But Boanga took the penalty kick against McCarthy, and Boanga talked after the game about when they played together at LAFC, Boanga wanted to stay after practice and take penalty kicks. It's just a thing that he does, and he needed a goalkeeper. And McCarthy was the one who said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll stay." And so they practiced endlessly all of last season. They practiced Boanga kicking penalty kicks and McCarthy trying to stop him. So when those two guys stepped up against one another, no shooter and goalie probably have ever known each other better than those two did. And Boanga said he knows I always go to the left. Everybody knows I always go to the left. So on this one, I went straight up the middle.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you can do. The advantage is always to the shooter on those penalty kicks. So you talk about McCarthy's good game. There was a defensive mistake on the set piece and then a penalty kick.
That's
so again, like you said, he didn't give up a goal from the run of play. and made the 7 saves. So it was a pretty good night for him.
Yeah, I thought he was great. I didn't have any problems. Miki Yamane, I thought he played really well. We'll talk about it now, and let's get to it. But in the 31st minute, the LA Galaxy, let's talk about the good thing first. Let's talk about Aude. Aude comes in. The Galaxy, their only goal is manufactured and really put together by some good passing. And then it is, Julian Aude cutting inside from his left back position. He cuts inside, gets a shot off. It goes off the post. That one should have been buried, right? And you're sort of like, oh, man, that's unlucky. The ball comes back. I don't think he hits. Maybe he hits it the first time. The ball rebounds and gets blocked off the second time he hits it. And then I think Peck tried to hit it. Peck hit it and it got blocked again. And then it fell to Aude for the third time. You give Aude 3 chunks at it. And he finally puts the ball in the back of net. But that's his first Major League Soccer goal for Julian Aude. I thought it was well worked. I thought that Ricky Puig was very involved in that. I thought that there was some good movement there that sort of opened some things up. It was a lot of fun to be at Galaxy Park at the watch party and watch everybody jump up and down whenever that ball went in. So that was a lot of fun to be there and witness and to be sitting in between. So that was a really good moment. The problem is that you go back to that and so quickly, right? Because you get Aude in the 29th minute, and then literally a minute later, you get Bouanga down in the other side. You get Yamane sliding in the box. And from the live action, and from live action whenever you watch the replay on TV, you would be convinced that that was a penalty. And just from live action, it looks like a penalty. You're like, oh man, that looks like a penalty. Yamane shouldn't have slid, blah, 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 the whole deal. As soon as they showed the first replay, I was like, oh, that's not a penalty at all. Bouanga drags the right foot, then lifts up the landing gear, and then because Yamane isn't close enough to foul him, he reaches out with his right foot in order to create the contact and then goes down. I will say this. You can certainly blame this podcast, especially me, for being a homer on these things. I have not found one person who's not attached in some way to LAFC who says that this is a penalty kick. As a matter of fact, there is a Fox crew with Tony Miola. You had the MLS crew with Taylor Twellman. You had some of the guys who work for MLS like Andrew Wiebe. You had Hercules Gomez out there. You had almost everybody. And I seriously, I haven't found anybody who said, oh, that's a penalty kick. There's not one person who says that was a penalty kick. And the reason you know that it's not a penalty kick, one, for the mass of people who are very intelligent who looked at it and said, this is not a penalty kick, this is manufactured, Bouanga drives to contact. You know who also thought it wasn't a penalty kick, Kevin? VAR. VAR thought it wasn't a penalty kick. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone and called John Freeman into the monitor, because it has to be a clear and obvious error. And so VAR looked at that replay and they watched it, and we were watching the replays as we were sort of going, we're like, this is going to get overturned. VAR goes, we think you made a mistake. That's what it is whenever you have VAR. You tell the center referee, we think you made a mistake, and we want you to get a chance to correct it, because we're looking at this saying, that's not a penalty. We know it's not a penalty. In fact, it's clear and obvious error. We're not just giving you another chance to look at it, Kevin. That's not the bar that is set for VAR. The bar that is set for VAR is a clear and obvious error. And that is what VAR said to John Freeman. We think that you may have missed on this. We think this is a penalty kick. So
I think the real tell, from what I heard from some of the commentators, and I don't remember if Taylor and Hercules were people who were mentioning this or not, but certainly some of the experts you mentioned talked about the real tell was the dragging of the right foot.
Yes,
the right foot drag was the real show that he might have even been able to. He might have wound up getting penalized for
simulation.
For simulation, because of he did cause the foul.
He caused the foul.
It was kind of a chance he played for Yamane to slide in the box like that.
Can I say I disagree with that? Do you know why I disagree with that? He slid in a way to block a ball that would have been cut back if Bouanga decided to cut it back. But not only did that, he slid far enough away that he wasn't going to touch Bouanga. It was Bouanga who reached out and touched him. Yamane is not that close. Yet Bouanga had to turn and move his body towards Yamane in order to make that happen.
But the thing is, when you leave your feet, when you give up your feet, then you can't change direction. You can't move.
I swear to God, this is like one of those things that people say. That if you're a defender, you're going to leave your feet. You're going to leave your feet all the time. You're going to leave your feet in the box. You're going to leave your feet out in other places. Yes, is it somewhat of a risk? Absolutely. Did Yamane take a risk whenever he slid? Not really. He was in a good position. He was going to block and he cut back. I don't like that talking point. I think it's oversaid. I know what you're saying is, oh, well, just stand up and that way, you could. Bouanga turns the corner on him if he stands up. He ran him out of bounds. That's basically what happened. Yamane cut off the angle and ran him out of bounds. So do you blame the defender? By the way, a defender who's been very, very good this year in terms of that. And we all agree it's not a foul, right?
Right, but again, I think when you leave your feet, then you allow Bouanga the chance to simulate that contact because you're out of the play. You've lost your feet. You can't react. You can't pull back. You can't turn. I understand what you're saying, but I think it is a risky thing when against a smart player like Bouanga, when you give your feet up, then you allow them to sort of have the advantage to turn into you, to break away, to do whatever you want to do while you're on your feet,
right? And
the guy's sliding past them.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying too, but I just think that when you leave your feet, you're committed to that movement, and you can't change your mind. And it allows the other player, the opposing player, if they're quick enough and fast enough and smart enough, to do what Bouanga did, which was, draw the foul.
The life of a defender is if you don't slide, people will ask you why you didn't slide to try to block it. And if you do slide and some guy cheats, which is what happened, right? You get blamed for it again. That's just all I'm saying is this is not a Yamane problem. This was a good play by Yamane. I'm not going to put it on him. I don't like that talking point. I think it's lazy. I think if you talk to most defenders, they're going to tell you, we're going to slide. We have to. That's part of defense. Whenever you get there. By the way, not even in emergency defending. Yamane wasn't going to get the corner turned on him. He had the angle. So he did all the right things, put himself in the right position, slid in the right way. He's been outstanding, and I just won't tolerate any Yamane slander. That's no. I have that type of thing. No, I know what you're saying, but I hear it all the time. I'm just not a believer in it. You're going to see guys slide. That is absolutely going to happen. Is it more risky than staying on your feet? Sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the easiest play. Let's see. Jose put in a $10 super chat. Hey guys, thank you for your amazing work on these pods. Could an option be down the road to be slide Peck into forward and bring in Fagundes with Paintsel? Maybe it adds to the attacking. Thanks again. Absolutely, you could. I think the big question on a lot of this is going to be timing of substitutions and all that. I just want to go back to though. So that gets called. Freeman makes a mistake. I already watched instant replay. Instant replay said Andrew Wiebe said he made a mistake. I mean, there's nobody in any of their right minds that are going to say it. Now, we know because we covered the LA Galaxy for so long, Kevin, that I remember, and I don't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2017. Maybe it was 2018, something like that. There was a center back named Dave Romney. You remember that guy?
I'm thinking of the exact same play. I've been thinking about that since we started this conversation. The exact same play. And Romney slid.
Well, no, this is a different one. This is a different one. Okay,
not the one we got called for simulation and got the red card.
No, it is, but he didn't slide. Okay. He was the one who was called. He was not called for simulation. He was called for embellishment. Embellishment means there's contact, but you go down, right? And so what happened in the game was Romney's in the box and he's ready and trying to get a header, and he gets fouled. He got stepped on, and he went down, and they called a penalty kick. And then later, the disciplinary committee came out. And they issued him a suspension and a fine for embellishment. And the reason that there was a suspension is because they felt that his embellishment caused the referee to give a penalty kick, and that penalty kick then led to a goal. And so therefore, that was a big game change. And so he got suspended one game. So if we were in that similar time frame in 2017, 2018, I think the disciplinary committee could go after Bouanga for going in there and simulating to an extent that everybody in their known world except for John Freeman, picked it out, that Bouanga could be punished for that. Do you want to hear the fun part? Disco's not going to look at it at all. They're not going to look at it.
That's not going to happen. And by the way, it was 2017, and I remember that was 2017 because in that very same game, I believe, if it wasn't that game, it was the one before, Jermaine Jones also got a red card for some shenanigans in the penalty box or in the penalty area, the 18-yard box. There was something about Romney and Jermaine Jones that I remember that Jermaine Jones' foul or penalty was legit, and then Romney's wasn't. And there was a discussion about why did Disco decide to rule the way that they did? But that was 2017, and I remember that play. It was such a controversial play, and Romney was a good guy, and he was a stand-up guy, and he was like, "What are you talking about? I
got fouled.
How can you call that a foul?"
No, yeah, and this was not him initiating contact, by the way. It was embellishment of contact. Basically, they're saying the contact wasn't enough to take him down. He got suspended. The discipline. I'm not telling. This is not me what am I hypothesizing? I'm not hypothesizing. The Disco's not going to look at this. They're going to turn it down. They're not going to look at it. There's going to be no repercussions. And in a game where the LA Galaxy got fouled 20-something times, where yellow cards were very late to show, it's very telling in just the way that game was refereed, and that Freeman decided not to turn over his decision in that. It's baffling. Everybody doesn't understand it. I don't understand it. I imagine that if you were a pool reporter there and you had any interest whatsoever in being a fair and equitable sort of pool reporter, that you would ask a question on that. Having said that, I will also know that Freeman would have said, I called a foul on the penalty, and then whenever I went to VAR, I confirmed that. Did you see the replay, Kevin, where they showed the VAR, like the speed at which VAR was showing the replay? Like at one point they were showing like a 3 times speed replay of the event over and over and over again. It was like a bad GIF, right? It was like bad, don't do. And you're like, what are you looking at? And the fact that Freeman spent so much time looking on an angle that was behind the play and not the definitive angle for the play, to me shows that he had no idea what he was looking for. And that the VAR didn't do a good enough job. And remember, this all comes out of Arlington, right? There's all a single building there, and that's where VAR takes care. But the VAR didn't do a good enough job of saying, no, this is the definitive angle. You have to look at this in order to make your decision, because the angle he was looking at was incorrect. It was from behind, where you can't see that Bouanga pulls up his foot. You can't see that the left foot. Here's the worst thing. You talked about dragging the right foot. 100%. Watch the left foot after the right foot starts dragging. It's already up, tucked, and falling before the right foot reaches out and touches Yamane. So again, the contact initiated by Bouanga. The foul of him falling over started before Yamane ever touched him. He was never going to touch him. It was never going to be there. He realizes that he's going to fall and not touch anything, and that's why he reaches out with the right foot. Crazy call.
And I think another difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is the Romney thing was never looked at by VAR.
Well, I don't think was there VAR in 2017? Was there? That was before VAR, or was it? I think it was before VAR.
So Disco's going to say, look, the referee looked at this. He's wrong. You know, they might say he's wrong.
Oh, he's not going to say anything.
At it, fair. He tried to make a fair judgment. He got it wrong, but there were no shenanigans. Where in the Romney thing, it was like, oh my God, nobody even saw this. This is egregious. The referee didn't get a chance to rule on this. He was looking the other way, or however they decided to make that ruling. But I think that would be Disco's excuse on this one, is that, look, the referee looked at the replay and didn't think there was anything there. He should have made another decision perhaps, but he didn't, and so we're not going to overrule him.
Yep. By the way, Lex in the chat room is correct. Bouanga, if you listen to what he said afterwards, said that he did what he needed to do in order to make sure there was contact there. If you're reading between the lines, he's saying that he basically drew that foul. He's saying that it wasn't
said something to the effect of, I've been taught what I did what I was been taught to do, or what we're taught to do in that situation. Yeah, he definitely did cop to doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it. So now you go into a game, and this is where I always get in an argument. People are going to argue, and if they want to argue, they can, that Bouanga missed a sitter at the end of that game, and that really, if you look at it, it should have been 2-1 anyway, even with the bad penalty kick call. Except that changes the whole outlook of the game. If that game is 1-1 going into halftime, I think we have a better game. If that game is 1-1 later in the second half, then I think there's a game to be played there. And I think that, LAFC is a little less concerned about sitting back and maybe trying to press forward. I'll say this. The most boring El Trafico I think we've had. I saw one team for sure in LAFC that, and I don't like anti-soccer, but that was about fouling and seeing what the referee was going to do and to slow everything down. And certainly with Puig, but with Paintsil as well, right? You saw it with Peck. Peck got dragged down a bunch of times in there. Again, 20 fouls. It was very much not like, oh, hey, we're not going to let you run in behind us. It's just not going to happen. And they were letting the referee sort of be like, hey, go ahead and call the foul and then give yellow cards. And if we get too many yellow cards, maybe we'll stop. They didn't. There wasn't enough yellow cards. There wasn't enough danger for LAFC to sort of change that style. And I think Greg Vanney has a good gripe on it, which is if you have teams that want to have the ball and they're going to get fouled and you're not going to call those fouls, or you don't punish repeated fouls with yellow cards, really you should, if you foul somebody 3 times in a row, whether that's the same person or whether that's as a team, persistent infringement, you're there. And they went rather unscathed for that. I mean, Palencia probably fouled Galaxy players 6-7 times before he got a yellow card. That's too much. You can't allow that to happen. MLS refs have decided that that's kind of okay. And I think that Vanney and company have to adjust how they're going to play Kevin, because we've seen it now. I think we saw it in the Miami game where, bad calls and not calling fouls were a thing. We saw it in a couple of the other games that the Galaxy have played where they just don't call fouls. And if they do, they're just not punishing repeated fouls. So if you want to grab and hang on to Paintsel as he tries to run by you, you're going to get a yellow card, but that's all you're going to get. And then the bar for the second yellow is going to somehow be raised through the ceiling, which is what happened in this El Trafico, which was they used the fact, I think LAFC used the fact that this is a rivalry game, that they know that it's always a physical game to their advantage. Maybe that's smart, or maybe MLS referees need to understand what a foul is, what not a foul is, and how to adjudicate yellow cards.
Well, I mean, the other games, the Miami games, we have the real referees back now. John Freeman should not have been in this situation where, again, Greg Vanney for the second time this season said, "I don't know what a foul is. I'm not quite sure what a foul is." And I think it was Vanney, someone on the Galaxy side talked after the game that if not for that penalty kick, like you said, it's 1-1. LAFC's got to push the game a little bit. They can't sit back in that block. They have to at least pretend to play offensively at some point to try to get the 3 points at home. But leading 2-1, they were able to spend this whole second half just sitting back. And you're right in talking about those fouls. Tillman got a yellow card fairly early and stayed in for most of the game and talked about how their game plan was, look, yeah, you have to be smart, but I'm not coming out because I have one yellow card that early. I'm going to play the rest of the game. And I'm going to play the way I always play, which was LAFC's decision. We're going to play our game. And it's kind of almost like you're challenging the referee. Are you going to give me a second yellow? Are you going to give me a second yellow? I'm going to play the same way I played. You gave me the first one. What's going to happen now? And Freeman, I guess, really wasn't up to the challenge.
Well, again, his 55th game in charge. So he's not a guy who has done a ton of games. Not a guy who's a newbie either, right? But for this game, you would expect that you would get guys like Villarreal or Elfath. I know that Elfath was doing the Seattle game with the Galaxy the game before. But you would expect that you're going to get MLS's best. I don't think that happened. Although Freeman, I think, was one of the runner-ups for referee of the year last year. I think I read that somewhere. So that's some good reporting right there. I think I read that one time somewhere. So that's something there. Let's get to some super chats and clean those up. Gary, $5 super chat. We love Scott. Hang in there, buddy. Prayers for you, my friend. Scott, one of our good listeners, battling cancer. We're always paying attention to you, Scott. I saw you in the chat room. I hope you're feeling better. So go get some rest, and we're thinking about you. But Gary, your super chat is well taken, so thank you for that. We also had To Live and Drive in LA, $5 super chat. Buanga's dive was even worse than Robin's against Mexico in the 2014 World Cup. No era penal. Is that the one? Did I say it correct, Kevin? Yeah. Okay, good.
No era penal. Yeah, it wasn't a penalty.
Philip, by the way, says, Josh, I won't tolerate any Omar Gonzalez slander. There was a nice joke in our live show. We'll talk about that here in a second. That we did. And then a $5 super chat from Adam. My opinion, LAFC got lucky because of the penalty. If not, it could have been a draw. I know it wasn't Galaxy's best game of the season. LAFC wasn't that better. Again, I don't think LAFC was that dangerous in terms of things. And then Adam also goes and says, thoughts on why substitutions weren't made better. I have a really good thought on why substitutions weren't made better. And we've been discussing it in the Discord. Vanney does tend to hold on to subs, I think, maybe a little too long. And I think that's a valid criticism in some of those. The other thing is that the guys who are on the field and the amount of creativity that you have on the field when you have Peck, Paintsel, Puig, Brugman, Joveljic, and there's the ability to find a goal. You could be down for 89 minutes and they're not playing very well, right? And those guys can still find a goal in that. And so I think you're always going to give them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt before you really change something. And then whenever you did have to change something, and Greg Vanney did change by going in, bringing in subs near the end, but you bring in Berry in the 77th minute, and then you bring in Fagundes in the 87th to take out Brugman, right? So those types of things. Fagundes is one of those guys I think is the guy who can make the biggest difference off the bench. And so, yeah, you want to see him a little bit earlier. I also think that whenever they brought in Berry for Aude, you understand there's only two center backs. There's only two defenders, really. You had Cerrillo in there as well, right? But there's only two defenders that are back playing defense then. Peck was almost playing like a left wing, left back position at some point, and had to do a lot of chasing. And so I think there was a hesitancy to change the shape and the formation, especially whenever you're only down one goal. The idea there is that these guys are going to be able to find a goal. Now, ultimately, it wasn't Vanney who let any of it down, and I'll argue that all day long. It is the players. I mean, we talked about Ricky Puig. not hitting guys in stride, not being able to find passes. He's been struggling now. This is 3 games in a row outside of the 8 minutes in Sporting Kansas City, right? But he's been struggling. And so when he struggles, the LA Galaxy struggles. Ricky, to me, Kevin, is not a perfect fit for Vanney ball, right? It's not that perfect fit for moving the ball around and being patient and doing all those things. Ricky is very much high risk, high reward. You want to see him make the easier pass a lot more than he does. He tried to slot passes in between guys. It didn't go off for him. Now he's been trying to do that the last 3 games, and a lot of it hasn't paid off for him. So, yeah.
You know what I was going to say about Ricky? I think the way the players the Galaxy have this year, and by the way, going to the substitutes, you're absolutely right. When you look at the guys on the bench and the guys on the field, the thought has to be, is this guy on the bench going to give me a better chance to get a goal? Is this guy better than the guy on the field? And with the exception of Fagundes, the answer is no. The guys on the field are better. Now when they get tired, maybe they're bringing in Berry, you're figuring we're going to be a little more physical up front, and that might give us a better chance. But when you look at the guys on the bench is not all that deep. And there's really one guy, as you said earlier, one game changer on the bench, Fagundes. And, you might have wanted to bring him in a little bit earlier, but that would be my only criticism on the substitutes. But talking about Ricky, with Chicharito before and then just the way they played without any real true wide out wingers, they had some guys who played on the wing, but not really wide out. Ricky was well suited for that. Everything's sort of up the middle. I think with Peck and with Paintsil and with their speed, I think Ricky's having a little bit of a hard time adjusting. Things are not going straight up the field. They're playing much wider than they have in the past. And I think Ricky's having a little bit of a problem with that.
Well, and let's be clear, LAFC was good with their game plan of dropping back and not giving everybody talking about Peck, talking about Paintsil. Where were they? Well, whenever the LA Galaxy failed to sort of play in transition and play well in transition, there wasn't a lot of danger for LAFC to see those guys get around the edge and to sort of create things. The Galaxy are going to have to learn how to create. They're going to go and play a Vancouver team that is very much a transition team that will play them on the counter and do all those fun things as well. So there's going to be a low block. The Galaxy are going to have to learn how to defeat the low block. This is something that they're going to have to do. I know that there's criticism on Jovalic for this game. I will say this. I thought he had the best shot outside of Aude of a chance of a ball going in. It was worked through the middle, and he got the ball. He was able to turn and fire, and he made Lloris make a save, right? So you had something there from him, but he didn't have the service. The Galaxy weren't getting him the ball. Balls weren't being found in the middle. The outside working towards the middle wasn't working. It was a very disjointed LA Galaxy team. I don't know what about LAFC super disrupted them, because I think they could definitely... I think that they're the better team there. Again, I've watched both those teams play for the last couple times. I don't think it was LAFC's superior playing style or superior talent like it has been a lot of times with these games. I don't think that was the case in this one. I will say that I think Vanney tried to rely on some of his designated players to do the job that they were supposed to do, and they didn't perform on the day. And that's the problem they have to work on.
Well, we've talked about this before. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend. And the reason I say that is for two reasons, really. The Galaxy bouncing back from their first loss of the year. How do they handle that? They knew they were not going to go 34 games without a loss. So this is something obviously they've anticipated and expected, but still, how do you bounce back? He played so well up until this point. How do you bounce back from the first loss of the season? And then the second thing is, and Vanney's a very smart coach. He's been around a long time. He knows that now the game plan is out. Everybody saw what LAFC did, and everyone knows, look, this is the way to beat the Galaxy. First of all, beat them on set pieces. They got to clean that up. They knew that going in. But then, with the low block, taking away the transition, all those kind of things, that's, as you said, that's what Vancouver's really good at. The Galaxy knows that's what they're going to get against Vancouver. It's just like in baseball. If a guy beats you with his fastball every time, you got to make an adjustment to catch up to that fastball, and then he'll do something else. The Galaxy are in that position now. The game, the joke is up. Everybody knows how to beat the Galaxy. The LAFC showed that. Now the Galaxy have to adjust and say, we're not going to be beaten that way again. You're going to have to find another way to do it. And so can they make these adjustments in a week? I think a lot is going on this week with the Galaxy that will show us, are they really the team that we thought they were through the first 5, 6 games? Or is this team still sort of a work in progress?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to sort of see. Adam, $2 super chat. He agrees with you. Big test Saturday versus the Whitecaps. Need to rebound, right? So that's something certainly to watch there. Executive producer Herb, $32 super chat. Thank you for that, executive producer Herb. We appreciate you. Hey, Josh, hey, Kevin, question for both. Did Vanney get out-coached in this game? Do you think it was coaching? Do you think it was performance on the field? Do you think those things are linked? Where do you sit?
Yeah, I do think they're linked. I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not a coach. If I were a coach, I'd be on the sidelines instead of on the pod. But I do think that those two things go together. I think, the coaching and the game plan, they make use of the player's strengths. So did Steve Cherundolo make better use of his player's strengths? Was his game plan more successful? Absolutely. But then again, it was a set piece. That was a play they set up. So credit them for that. The penalty, kind of iffy. Cherundolo didn't coach that penalty necessarily, but I think his game plan worked better, and I think he used his players and the strengths of those players better than Vanney did. The three Galaxy DPs really didn't show up, or at least for long stretches didn't show up.
Yeah, for me, I say no. This to me is performance on the field. I felt the Galaxy had the game plan to be able to do it. He switched Peck, he switched Paintsill, he moved them around. People are going to criticize Ricky coming back and getting the ball so deep. Ricky likes to do that, and are you going to tell Ricky to stop doing that? It's very hard. And so he's going to want to dribble through and sort of create that stuff. The bottom line is Ricky had plenty of chances where he broke lines. Ricky had plenty of chances where he broke into through defenses and stepped between 2-3 guys. Whenever he wasn't getting hacked down like all the rest of the Galaxy speedsters and what they were trying to do, he was successful in breaking lines. His passing was horrible. To me, that's not Vanney. Vanney's not passing the ball, right? That type of thing. Looking at Brugman had some horrible passes in there as well. Again, that's not coaching to me. That's performance. Show me the team in this one. I talked to, this was a long time ago, but I was talking to somebody about a team that had high expectations and they were coming in and they were getting ready to play, and the whole, you watch them play this game and they just didn't seem to have it. And this was in a very important game. I'm not going to say names because it would give away who I'm talking about, but it's a very important game, big stage. There's a lot of pressure on this stuff, and this team just didn't perform. So I got to talk to one of the coaches afterwards about, a week after, and it's like, well, why didn't you change things? Maybe changing things, and this coach and maybe the coach is covering themselves, right? The whole day. But this coach was like, you can make all the changes in the world when the players don't play the way that they can play, you're not going to win a game, right? And so to me, there's some of that in this, which is when you don't play the way. And listen, there were changes within this Galaxy lineup that should have caused a lot more hiccups. So the Cerrillo thing should have been a huge problem, and it wasn't. So credit to Cerrillo, by the way, Edwin Cerrillo playing in that. He said he didn't even have time to be nervous because basically he had one day of practice there and they just played. And he's like, I believe in my ability. I can go out there and do it. So he played at center back. And that was in keeping with Josh's simple coaching formula, Kevin, which is only change the minimum number of things when you have to change something, right? So if somebody goes down, you don't move Yamane from right back into center back and then you have to put a right back out there. No, you keep everybody in their same position except for one guy, right? So you move Cerrillo back. And Vanney was even saying they thought they might have an advantage when attacking with Cerrillo sort of stepping out in front of the defense and being part of the defensive line, but also part of the attack, that maybe they would have advantages. So it was a very hybrid system that I actually think would work in a lot of different scenarios, except if you allow the first goal. If you want to talk about being out coached, then talk about the set piece defense, because that's something that has to be fixed. There's no excuse for it. There hasn't been an excuse for it. And now these guys are still in there giving up goals on set pieces. They're going to put themselves in bad situations, Kevin, and they're not always going to be able to come back from that. So
yeah, we're starting our third month here with the set piece problem. It's something that they've known about and they haven't been able to correct. And as I talked about it, the key is in a long season like this, it's adjustments. It's you play a style of play, the rest of the league figures it out. Then you have to make an adjustment, play a different style. What I will say, two things about Vanney versus Cherundolo. I think Cherundolo, Vanney's players didn't seem to execute the game plan, and whether that's because they had a bad day or because the game plan wasn't working to their strengths, I don't know. I think Cherundolo did a little bit better job of working to his players' strengths, and that's not a knock on Vanney. As you said, the players didn't produce, but once you realize these players aren't producing or that the other team's game plan is really giving you problems in a game. Now you can work on it during practice in the week, but on game day when the game's happening, again, the bench is just not that deep. If you go back and think about some of the Bruce Arena teams when Alan Gordon could come in and actually change the way the team played, or Boateng could come in and make the team faster and change the way the team played. You look at the Galaxy bench, there's no one there. It's the game plan that we came up with maybe minor changes during the game. That's what we're stuck with. We don't have a guy that can alter the way we're playing on that bench. And, that's just the problem with a relatively short bench.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest comment that we can add to that is talking about Miguel Berry. I understand why they got him. And listen, I think their expectations of him are not very high, right? So I think whatever they get out of him, they're happy with. But if you're asking me what the LA Galaxy are missing, Kevin, you are correct. It's somebody coming off the bench that can change things. And right now, Miguel Berry's not that guy. He was able to combine with Joveljic, I think, in the SKC game. And that's sort of been his biggest contribution, is to be involved in that particular play. Other than that, Miguel Berry, while I like the runs that he makes and I like his energy that he comes in, I sort of like the big thing, he seems to always be a step too late. He seems to always be a step too far away. He seems to always not quite be in position to get the pass. There's too many little things that aren't lining up for him to be successful, and the LA Galaxy needs somebody else that they can pair with Joveljic in order to get up there whenever they need to score a goal. They haven't had to been in that situation a bunch late in the game, and so seeing Berry come in wasn't a surprise whenever it did. But for me, that has to be one of those things that happens. That is the next step for me. If you're asking me what the LA Galaxy are going to buy in the summer, it's a second striker of some sort, whether that's U22, whether that's in TAM. I think that's one of the things. I think center back is sort of settled now. I think that you have Cerrillo in there. I think you have the ability to play him and Aguirre, so that seems rather settled. With Delgado, you have Fagundes, and Fagundes can cover for a whole bunch of different areas, whether that's in the center or on the wing. So that seems to have coverage there. So for me, the biggest coverage area is second striker. What that ends up being and whether or not the LA Galaxy go after that is certainly something left up that we could we're going to theorize about. But for me, there's a second striker. There needs to be.
Well, and you mentioned that Ricky was going deep for the ball. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more work. He should be very comfortable with Bergman by now, and maybe that's a link that's missing. The Bergman link and Delgado getting the ball to Ricky in a better position where he doesn't have to go back that far. He doesn't have to make a 40 or 50-yard run. Yeah, he can do that, and he did it successfully, and he can break lines. But imagine if he didn't have to do that. If he was able to run at top speed for 25 or 30 yards as opposed to 40 or 50, it might make a little difference. It might make his passes to some of these wingers like Peck and Paintsil that he's still having trouble catching up with. It might make those passes, he might be able to deliver them with a little bit more mustard on him than he is right now. I don't like the idea of him going back that far. I know he's comfortable doing that, but that's what Bergman and Delgado are supposed to be doing, getting him the ball in a better position.
We'll see how that plays out and how that all goes down. Now, this ends 2-1. The LA Galaxy first loss on the season for them. But now they have basically no time to sulk and pout and all the other stuff. Wipe that one clean. The Galaxy will now get ready to play against Vancouver, and that game is
on the road.
On the road. I saw somewhere, and I haven't even started to do my Vancouver game prep yet. But someone in the chat room, Alex, I think in the chat room, says that the Galaxy have not beat Vancouver on the road since 2013. That would be an interesting one to sort of go back and look at and see if that's true. So we can sort of pay attention to that one as we go forward. But that's going to be the next big thing. Now, Kevin, we would love to say that that's the end of El Trafico and sort of close the books at that and say that relatively speaking, it seemed like a pretty quiet El Trafico. I will tell you from my perspective, I thought it was the most boring El Trafico, but I would also like to talk real quick about my experience at the live show at Galaxy Park. The LA Galaxy were nice enough to invite Corner of the Galaxy down to do a podcast at Galaxy Park as a pregame podcast. And so I think we ended up doing about 55 minutes. It was myself and Mr. Alex El Nino Ruiz out there, the little dude, 20 years old, can't even drink. I'm pretty sure his mom dropped him off at the stadium. That's not true. He drove himself, but I'm going to say it anyway. So we were there.
Is he a good driver?
I would imagine he is. Okay. But no, so we go and we got everything set up. Everything was set up. The Galaxy gave us a great little spot off to the side. We probably had about 70, 80 people there who were watching the live show. By the way, I think we could go a lot bigger if we ever wanted to do a live show. There were a lot of people there, and they were sort of off holding their seats, like they were afraid their seats were going to disappear whenever they set them down. We could draw those people over and get some more listeners, but it was a ton of fun to do. Really enjoyed it. Really had a good time. Alex, Alex is going to be so good. I mean, he's just scratching the surface, Kevin. He's like, you and I talk about him all the time, and he'll end up hearing this. This will make his head get real big. But he was nervous before it, which was good. That's always a good sign. He was, this is a live show. There's going to be people paying attention,
Don't piss him off because you're going to be working for him. So I know I'm going to be working for him if I laugh long enough.
Absolutely, 100%. So, but I had a great time. The fun part of it for me was I didn't really get to cover the game. We got everything put away, and it was like I finally sat down in about the 10th or 15th minute whenever things were sort of settled down. That's whenever I got it. Matt and Alex, some of our listeners, had actually saved seats for Alex and I in the very center. We had a great view of the stadium, so we were able to sit there and watch. And I got to watch a game surrounded by supporters, which I haven't done in a really long time. It was an enjoyable experience. I had a great time. So got to do that, and then didn't get to participate in any of the post game because I hopped in my car and was headed out. By the way, it was freezing by the time. But a big shout out to Mr. Kevin Ryder, who is as wonderful a person in person as you have imagined him on the radio. Just a tremendous guy. A lot nicer than you. We're going to start calling him Nice Kevin, just to differentiate between
tell
you.
Everybody his claim to fame. You just keep calling him Kevin Ryder.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows who that is?
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody knows. From K-Rock,
All right.
Kevin and Bean, and now with at KLOS on Kevin and Sluggo. He was with K-Rock for 30 years. So a lot of people have grown up. I would also like to shout out, before I say wonderful, nice things about Kevin some more, is that Larry Morgan, not on Twitter, decided to show up as well. So we got to talk to His Royal Highness himself, His Royal Retired Highness there. He stopped by and hung out with us before the show. And so we got to say hi and all that. You got to meet Alex. I don't think they've ever even met, right? One of those. So that sort of thing. But Kevin Ryder was there. Just a tremendous human being. And I'm going to say something that's really stupid and really obvious to all of you. I got to hang out with him a little bit beforehand. We got to talk a little soccer, and we were just trying to, say hi and that type of thing. Extremely nice man. And so we started the show, and he started talking. And as soon as he started talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. He's a professional. Like, it's so blatantly obvious. Go back and listen to the podcast. We put out the pregame show. It's not going to be that much fun because it's us talking about the game that's going to happen that is now over. So it's dead content, except for the Kevin Ryder interview, which is kind of fun. So hanging in there about the 10-minute mark, that type of thing. And you can talk to and hear from Mr. Kevin Ryder there. But he's a true professional and so nice, and was off to the Kings game because he was going to watch the Kings game. And then as soon as the Kings game was over, he was going to go back home and watch the Galaxy game. And he was going to not get any spoilers. Like, he was trying real hard not to get any spoilers from it. So, yeah.
Well, you know what I just thought about with Alex? He's the only one of us, if you think about Eric and Sophie and Kevin, the nice Kevin,
right.
and Larry Morgan out on Twitter and everybody. Alex is the only one who is younger than the Galaxy.
That's we were talking about how Alex still has this delusion like he can play. Alex and I went on to one of the futsal courts, and we were hitting shots before they let everybody in. And Alex was like, "Hey, take a video of me, send it to Will Kuntz. Tell him I'm ready to go in." Right? I'm like, "Oh, that's cute. You're still young, and you think you could play professional soccer, right?" Like, we all had that delusion at one point. We're all younger than the players. We're like, "Oh man, I could still do this. This is fine." No, it's over for me now. I might be able to coach. That's about it. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, by the way, Philip, $2 super chat says, Larry not on Twitter equals sad he wasn't on your show. I know Larry was hanging out and hanging off to the side there. But I wasn't gonna throw him in without any prep for him. You never know. You never know if he was paying attention or not, so that would be a mean thing, but Larry's great. He was texting me after the game too. So, Kevin, I'd like to say again that this was a nice, quiet El Trafico, that there wasn't any major incidents or anything, but of course, except, yeah, I know, right? One of those things that we have to touch about. The LA Galaxy came out with a statement today. LA Galaxy forward Joseph Paintsel was the victim of a racist social media incident following Saturday's match against LAFC. The club stands with Joseph and anyone who has faced racial abuse through social platforms or anywhere else. The incident was immediately reported to Major League Soccer. We're also working with MLS to ensure Joseph has all the resources and support he needs at this time. There is no place for racism in our community, in our league, or anywhere else in society. MLS came out with their statement as well. Major League Soccer explicitly condemns discriminatory and racist remarks and is committed to fully supporting LA Galaxy forward Joseph Paintsel and others across our league who are victims of hate speech. MLS and the club hold on.
LAFC did too. Came out with a statement saying that they'd stand with Joseph just to get that on the record.
I imagine that they did. MLS and the club continue to work with local authorities, and anyone found responsible will be held accountable to the full extent. So LAFC also putting out their statement as well. I will say this, and I think it goes without saying, but we'll say it anyway. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's LA Galaxy fan, LAFC fan, Seattle. I don't care. Any team, any place, any time. This is not the place for it. Banter is great. I love banter, going back and forth and see people. I also say people get carried away with that, but that's fine. Banter is banter. There's a clear defining line there whenever you're bantering. What was said, and I know what was said, and I saw it. What was said was not banter, and it wasn't meant to be banter. It was meant to be racist and abusive, and that's what it was. Now they'll go into that, and so there's no place for this. I know, everyone. I'll speak for myself, but standing behind Joseph Paintsel and saying, you're welcome here. You're welcome to play soccer here. You are wanted here in Los Angeles, and the LA Galaxy are lucky to have you, and that there are a vast majority of people who are in Major League Soccer that are happy that Joseph Paintsel is here to be able to play in Major League Soccer. So while I would love to say it's one knucklehead, it's never just one. There's always more, but in this particular case, there's zero place for it. So now you have to deal with that. It's one of those things that's like, okay, now this is something that is sort of hanging out there and going with. So it's disappointing. I'd rather not see it.
Well, and just the idea of in a rivalry game, especially in a rivalry game, fans seem to think that, oh, he's on the other team, we can say whatever we want. This game, this is for bragging rights. It's for a lot of other things other than just the 3 points in the MLS standings. And so it's okay to do these things. It's not okay to do these things. And you see this in Europe a lot too. You're seeing it in MLS more and more and other levels of U.S. soccer, even down the USL Championship. There's the racism. There's the homophobia, which is a huge problem, probably bigger than because of a lot of players, if they admit to the the homophobic comments, maybe some of them haven't truly come out yet as gay, and so they don't acknowledge it. There's a lot of anti-Semitism, and that's growing. That's been a huge problem, especially in Eastern Europe for a long time. It's not going away, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse. And like you're right, there's no excuse for it. What there is no positive thing to it. It'd be ridiculous to think that there would be, but you wonder about the people that make those statements, what they think they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's good. And I think as the chat points out, Raheem Edwards was a victim of this as well at some point with comments on social media. So again, and it happens, I'm sure, we saw it in the Generation Adidas games that were being played. Major League Soccer coming out with statements about those as well. So it's a problem all levels, all clubs, all leagues right now. And so I think it's important that MLS has strong footing on this, stands the ground on this, sees out any investigation and punishes those who are there. I mean, I always think, you jump on the field and you interrupt a game, lifetime ban, like you're never allowed in any Major League Soccer stadium again, that type of thing. This is one of those things. 100%. Not only should you never be allowed to go to another Major League Soccer at any stadium, anytime, but there's probably some criminal repercussions for that as well in terms of the police and the court system. So,
and my understanding, this was primarily on social media, but the fans have a role to play in this as well. If you hear something at a game, if you're in a supporter section and someone gets out of hand, I think it's up to all of us to, if it happens in the press box, I'm going to say something. You're going to say something. If it happens in the stands, I think the other fans around there have to say, no, that's not that's not what we're about. That's not what, and we're not just talking about Galaxy fans, but fans of soccer, fans of sports, human beings. Hey, that's not what we're about. If that's what you want to do, take it outside, go somewhere else. And if that doesn't do it, then go get the security guards. And because it's against policy to do that, they'll be ejected from the stadium. But sometimes it does help with some of these knuckleheads. They don't really know what they're doing. They think they're being cool. If you just say, look, that doesn't work here, a lot of times that'll be enough. If it isn't, then you have to get the guy thrown out of the stadium, and he has to learn a lesson in a little bit more difficult way.
All right, so we'll move on from that ugly incident. Again, just looking at the LA Galaxy, let's go through some quick charts. Why not? It's Chart Monday. That's not a thing, but we'll make it one. 82.6% of the total available minutes the designated players have played. That's so high, Kevin. I can't even tell you how high that is. That is like the highest the LA Galaxy ever finished that I've been tracking, I think, since 2017 for designated players is like 68%. The LA Galaxy right now are on pace at 83%. A tremendous thing. So this is going to pay off. I think Peck is still trying to work his way in. I think that's one of the lessons and bumps that the LA Galaxy sort of have to swallow in this. We talk about the point percentage with the LA Galaxy getting their first loss, 3-1-3, but with that first loss, their point percentage, or getting a point or better in every game, is 85.7%. Again, very high for what they're doing. Still early through 7 games, how we say that. Away points right now, the LA Galaxy dropping down to 1.75 points per game away. In every away game except for the San Jose game, the LA Galaxy have allowed the first goal, Kevin. That has to change whenever they go up to Vancouver. Trying not to let Vancouver score the first goal. If they get the first goal, the LA Galaxy can win that game. If they allow the first goal, it's a lot harder for them. Having said that, the LA Galaxy are 1-1-1 when they allow the first goal, but all of those have come in away games. So the Galaxy need to do a lot better for that. As we look, I just wanted to go over the team of the match day, because what you're going to see is Seattle rising a little bit in this, and then you're going to see Vancouver having some players on this list. So there is going to be some time here very shortly that the LA Galaxy head up to Vancouver, and they're going to be playing a very much an on-fire Vancouver game. A Vancouver team who sits first in the Western Conference. As a matter of fact, let's pull up that chart. I wasn't going to do it, but now I want to do it. Who sits first in the Western Conference with 13 points? That means it's number 1 in the West versus number 2 in the West coming up this weekend. And Vancouver has had, I think, a much better run than LAFC has so far. So the Galaxy have every chance of coming back and taking over the top spot again. New York Red Bulls currently 14 points. The Supporters Shield leaders in New York, 14 points right now. Them, Philadelphia, Miami, sort of following each other there. But if the LA Galaxy get 3 points, if New York fails to get their 3 points, then the LA Galaxy will be vaulted back to the top of the Western Conference and back to the top of the Supporters Shield there.
And, you talk about Vancouver. I don't think in the past we've seen Vancouver have a good team for a stretch, a month, 2 months, sometimes start out the season really well, end the season really well. This is not that team. This is not the flash in the pan Vancouver teams that we're kind of used to. This has been building for a while, since pretty much the COVID season, which was a disaster. They didn't get to play any games at home. They had to play everything. I think they played in Utah. They've been building this team for a while. I think this is a very well-constructed team. I think this team has a chance to be a good team for a while, and they're going to be up at the top of the standings, I think, for most of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to sort of watch how that develops. I'm actually really excited to see this game. I think it's another good test for the Galaxy. Bounce back, try to get something on the road. Very easily, the LA Galaxy could lose 2 games in a row here to LAFC, who's probably a team that's been underperforming, and to Vancouver right now, who seems to be a pretty good team. So keep that in mind as the LA Galaxy head in that direction. We already talked about schedules and everything else. Executive producer Herb gave us $11 super chat. Did you have any potential guests that didn't materialize for the live podcast? If so, are you allowed to say any names? Yes. There was one I was absolutely trying to get to. He knows I was trying to. Sean Franklin. I think he ended up going to the game. And if not, he had another scheduling conflict that kept it. But I was very much trying to get Sean Franklin down there. We were also hoping that perhaps there would be some LA Galaxy players who were sort of hanging around that didn't get to go to the El Trafico game, which I'm sure they would have been really upset about. And so it was sort of one of those things like, well, they don't really want to be on your podcast because they would rather be at the game. And I sort of understood that as well. I'll say that with the change in leadership at the communications department, that one person there is currently a little underwater with all the stuff, and he's got a lot of stuff to do. And so I didn't want to press him and try to give him too much stuff on what I knew was going to be an extremely busy weekend. And so
you can mention his name. It's Kevin Acevedo, and he's on his stationary bike now, training for the Tour de France.
Tomorrow at 5 a.m. That's where he'll be listening to this this podcast, I'm sure. But no, I understand the workload that he has right now, and it's not that important. I thought we had Kevin Ryder there, and I thought that was like a good sort of fill for all of us to have. But as we go and we're going to do more live shows. I'm telling you right now, we're going to do more live shows. We have offers for a couple different ones. Hopefully the LA Galaxy reach out again and we can do something. I want a big crowd. I want a big one. Give me a big one. Give me a big crowd. Get me somewhere. I'm ready for like 150, 250 people. We're ready to go. I'll make a good show. I promise.
Yeah, I'm not so much concerned about the crowd. I'd like to go somewhere where beer is going to be involved.
Okay, so behind the scenes, this was one of the reasons I stopped covering the game was I actually got to drink a beer and watch a game, and I haven't done that in a very long time. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So one beer.
By the way, with having Kevin Ryder on, and I mean, I think there needs to be a minimum of one Kevin per podcast.
Absolutely not. That's too many. I'm telling you right now. It's too many. One is too many. The fact that we had 2. I'm glad you weren't there. If we had 2 Kevins on at the same time, the Earth would have. Well, we probably would have had another eclipse. That's really what probably would have happened. So, my kid, by the way, was bouncing off the walls today. So just in case you were wondering whether or not that myth is true, 100% true. So yeah, that's where we are.
Did you see it? Did you look up and see it?
So I I just was trying to watch whether or not it dimmed the light, and there was a slight dimming of the light, and I was like, okay, I see it. My wife was at home, so she poked a hole in a cup and used a paper plate and was able to like actually see. She took pictures of it for me, so I was actually able to see a little bit of it. But no, I did not have any special eclipse glasses to go looking up there. I'm sure those would be an attractive look, though.
Well, I was going to the Kings morning skate today in El Segundo, and I'm an idiot, and I suppose the listeners know I'm an idiot too. But I got there just before the eclipse was supposed to happen, so I sat in my car waiting for it to get dark.
Yeah, how'd that work for you?
It didn't work very well. And then I realized, well, I guess the eclipse isn't coming for another, half hour, so I'll go in to do my work at the Kings practice. And as I was going up the steps, there was a bunch of Kings employees there. It was team photo day, it turned out. And they all had the special glasses, and they allowed me to use the glasses to look up. And the eclipse was happening at that moment. It just didn't get dark.
Yeah, I know it is. There wasn't a really like sort of good one. But yeah, we want to do more live shows. I agree. Beer needs to be involved and all that fun stuff. Final thing.
There was no segue. There was no segue at all from the eclipse to we want to do more live shows.
No, I didn't think we needed.
You just ran right through that.
I'm trying to wrap this show up. It's a Monday. Right. I'm tired. You're tired. The Galaxy. Need to really, the whole deal is that like we're now waiting for the news that's going to break on all the rest of the week that will sort of get us into Vancouver, because I want to see if we get an update on Garces and when he's coming in. I think that's the next big step, although it looks like Kosaris will be back. I would imagine that Zavaleta will probably be back from his concussion protocol, but we'll have to see if that's the
and Jalen Neal is still, we're not sure. It's close.
Close. I mean, I would expect one more week and then he's probably in. That's sort of where I think the timeline is. It's close. Now that means he's into full training, right? Like that means then he can start working on getting back and into things. So yeah. We'll see how it goes. Final thing.
So probably another month before he actually sees any game action.
Yeah, I think so. Final thing, the LA Galaxy's Generation Adidas U17 team was in the final playing against Philadelphia's U17 Academy team. Finished in a 2-2 draw. The LA Galaxy fell 5-4 in penalty kicks in that. So the U17 is doing a great job. I think the U15s also were playing at one point into the semifinals in that. I was trying to track that down, but I had the 17. So in 3 group stage matches for the U17s, the LA Galaxy Academy held an unbeaten record of 2-0-1. They advanced to the knockout stages of the tournament. They played to a 2-2 draw in regulation and earned a 5-4 penalty kick shootout win over River Plate. We talked about that. In round of 16 on April 4th, in the quarterfinals, the Galaxy Academy earned a 1-0 win over Sporting Kansas City Academy on April 5th. In semifinals, the LA Galaxy earned a 3-0 shutout win over the San Jose Earthquakes on April 6th. So you're seeing all these different things. The Galaxy, by the way, gave up the first goal in this particular game against Philadelphia in the final. Philadelphia scored in the 31st minute. Then it was Dylan Vanney, that's Greg Vanney's son, who was assisted by Harbor Miller in the 38th minute, who scored. Then you had Adam Dunbar in the 40th minute, who scored, so it was up 2-1. And then in the 47th minute, you had Philadelphia score the equalizer in this, and then eventually on to PKs where the LA Galaxy ended up losing. But a really good run for both the U15s and U17s. Sort of fun to watch all of that play out and see how the LA Galaxy are doing. But it feels like the academy teams are really starting to pick up now. We're seeing a lot of successes with them. We're seeing a lot of wins. Mike Munoz involved down there and a lot of the stuff I think that's going on. So, it's interesting times with the LA Galaxy Academy. So fun to sort of watch.
So maybe Vanney is an attacker, not a defender like his dad.
I mean, if you grew up and your dad was a defender, you're probably going to want to be an attacker. Nobody wants to be a defender, right? I mean, I was a defender. I wanted to score goals too, but that wasn't my strong suit. I was like, I'm better than defender.
Well, it's like Jurgen Klinsmann was the sort of the uber striker, all he ever did think about attacking, and all his teams played that way. And his son turned out to be a goalkeeper.
Yeah. He has twin boys who are on that team, on the U17s. So yeah, he's the Vanney name running strong in there. Guillermo Barros-Schelotto, his son, is on one of those teams as well. I think on the 17s as well. So there's some high name power. By the way, Harbor Miller is on there as well, and we saw a lot of Harbor Miller in the Coachella tournament, and that was a lot of fun too. So he continues to play. So really fun.
So GBS's kids are still playing on the team when he's
yes
been gone for years. How does that work? Do they live on their own here, or what's the deal?
I think GBS comes in and out. And wow. I think he kept his spot in LA. I don't think he's moved. In fact, I think I've heard people see him around town. So
Mrs. GBS stayed here.
Yeah, they were like, I'm staying. This is too nice in the South Bay. All right. gas prices are high, taxes are up, all those fun things. But the weather, you can't beat the weather. And if you live in the South Bay and those areas around there, it's a pretty nice place to be. So,
there's no reason to stay here because you can get Corner of the Galaxy through the World Wide Web. You don't have to be here.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. You could go anywhere to the corner. I imagine the space station could get Corner of the Galaxy, which, by the way, maybe they stumble across because they were looking for a good space podcast and they typed in Corner of the Galaxy and they found us. So,
that's why you did that. Okay,
welcome to the internet. Welcome Corner of the Galaxy to the International Space Station. I'm sure we're up there, rocking and rolling. So, all right, I think that's it. Let's get out of here because I don't want to do anymore, and you don't want to do anymore. We want to go home. Wait, we are home, but we want to stop recording. Let's do that. So, let's get. You have anything else? Is there any last words?
I didn't have anything when I started.
And we know that every week. All right. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter,
and why would
on
you?
X at KBaxter11, head on over to LATimes.com for all of Kevin's wonderful writings. LATimes.com. Please head on over there and check that out. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com, where you can find all of our shows. Again, check out that pregame show so that you can catch the interview with Kevin Ryder, a nice little spot there, and marvel at how good Alex Ruiz is on the microphone in for that live show. So special thank you to the LA Galaxy for inviting us out to Galaxy Park. Special shout out to all of our fans and listeners who stopped by and said hi at Galaxy Park. We love you. We appreciate you. All right, for Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.